You're a liar. You're probably right. Might be dumb. So you can imagine that a lot of times I have to put together these worksheets like as a last minute thing. They're like, oh, let's put this new movie in there. So this was new a couple of years ago, and the day that I got the movie, I was like, okay, I did a bad job with the question. Okay, what else? Any other feedback on the film?
What is it exactly about? I don't see it.
Sorry, you have to check it out on YouTube. It's free on YouTube. Okay. So we're on
Agriculture.
9.3, number 24,
Agriculture,
and
yeah.
agriculture. Thank you. By the way, sophomores, I guess, were absent yesterday, and I think someone else was too. I can send your homework after class, but in case you weren't here yesterday, we're on number 24, which was our most depressing study goal of the year, my collection of interesting research about the impact of global warming. I beg your pardon? Yeah, and I guess this is another tragedy, so it's doubly depressing. While you're all shuffling your papers, remember that number 24 had a total of 11, and we finished the third prediction about climate change.
And you just got started on it.
Thank you. I just got started on number 3 about agriculture. While you're shuffling your papers, I need a volunteer to launch a demo for us.
Oh, thanks.
Okay. I say, well, it's okay. You can stay seated. I'll bring it to your desk.
Can't wait.
All right.
Are you going to put that away?
You mean this probe? I want everyone to hear. I want everyone to hear the instructions I'm going to give Daniel, because Daniel will give you the outcome of these instructions later. Daniel, this is a pH meter. It is digital. The result of the pH meter shows up here. So the first thing I'd like you to do is put it in the water and wait for the pH to stabilize. When it's stabilized, when that number stops changing, I'd like you to tell me your starting pH, and then I'll give you your next set of instructions. Okay? So are we ready to do this? All right. Yesterday, we were on agriculture. And you might remember that number 1 of 11 was shifting weather patterns. Number 2 of 11 was one of the impacts from that, what we call ecosystem shear. And number 3 of 11 I introduced but didn't get to wrap up, impacts on agriculture. Now, since many of you don't actually grow that much food, you may not know about this. Do you guys need me, or is this cool? No, it's cool. Many of you may not be experts on agriculture. I have to explain how weather impacts agriculture. Farmers can grow a bunch of different stuff. But as weather changes, remember, it's going to change one way or another for everyone. We don't know the details, but it'll either be warmer or colder, wetter or drier. For a farmer, that means they'll have to grow different stuff, but it also means they'll have to learn new tricks. Farmers maintain soil biology to protect nutrient cycling. They maintain soil structure to protect moisture levels. These are details that most of you and I myself have had to deal with if we don't grow our own food. But as weather changes, farmers will have trouble producing whatever they've been producing. And it's not likely that all farmers around the world will be able to deal with shifting weather on the spot. Imagine I can't grow broccoli anymore because I've got this new pest. It's going to take me a while to figure out what to grow next. I can't grow strawberries anymore because there's a little bit more fog in the mornings than I'm used to. It might take a while for me to figure out what to grow next. And so we've already seen in many agricultural regions around the world that agricultural productivity is going down, so we're getting into food shortages. And you remember we talked already about how the global circulation current affected Europe's weather and precipitation, right? And so Russia hasn't had grain surplus, and so Africa hasn't bought cheap grain for the last 6 years. Okay.
But then you also say that some places in Russia, there'd be some new farming land that was never able to be utilized.
Yeah, right. And so remember that, on the flip side, this will open up new areas, but that's not an immediate process.
Yeah.
It takes a while to establish the weather record to realize it's useful, and then it takes another long period for the soil conditions to catch up with what's needed to grow food. Okay. Number 4. Does anyone remember the most populous nation on Earth today? And number 2?
Yeah.
Thanks. If you can't see that, about 1/3 of humanity gets the majority of their water from glacier melt. Now, as the planet warms up, the glaciers are melting faster. You could say that 1/3 of humanity now today has extra water, right? Because all the glaciers are melting. So they're like, oh, tons of water in the reservoir. That's nice.
But don't think about the future.
But exactly, don't think about the future because that glacier is also your banking account and you're spending it faster than you're earning it. Glaciers are melting faster than they're growing. So number 4 is global water shortages, especially for the large percentage of our population that depends on glacier melt. Like the food shortages from yesterday. This makes people more likely to fight each other. It makes people more likely to get sick. This is super depressing. You and I probably don't have to worry. Chances are glaciers melting would not impact our Santa Barbara water supply. And of course, because we are living in our current reality, water budgets are not exactly a make or break issue. But considering that the number 1 source of disease worldwide is dirty water, water is a really big deal for a lot of humans. And so a shrinking water supply is actually really dangerous. I've got an interesting research. Remember I told you that I collect these papers? I've got an interesting research project about this. Somebody figured out how much water has melted from the glaciers and how much sea level should have risen. And then they put on the other side of that coin how many new dams we have along those rivers that have an increasing amount of glacier melt. If you could look up, sea level has probably risen this much in the last 20 years. It's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. It would be 30% higher if we hadn't built all those dams to catch the extra glacial melt. Interestingly, they're melting even faster than we thought because we used to measure global glacier melt by sea level rise and what percentage of sea level rise glacier melt. But it turns out a lot of that glacier melt is hiding, so to speak, in a lot of our new dams. Interesting, right? Okay. Number 5, this is probably the one that for me is most scary, and this was mentioned before. We talked about this in Unit 6. You may have heard of the National Institutes of Health or the Center for Disease Control. Both believe that the upcoming century will be the sickest period in human history because diseases will be a much bigger problem in a climate change world. There's a lot of detail. I'm not sure how many of these are AP test relevant. This is somewhat of an AP prep issue and somewhat of a personal edification issue. But there's a lot of reasons why disease is becoming more common. It is both. So here are some of the many reasons why disease becomes more common. I guess this is what? This is 5A. A, with food shortages, people are more likely to get sick. And B, with water shortages, people are more likely to get sick.
So it's sort of like an indirect. It's not like directly climate change thing that you do. It's like,
Well, there are direct ones too. So we're doing the indirect ones first. So indirectly, food shortages make people more likely to get sick. Indirectly, B, water shortages make people more likely to get sick. C, migration makes people more likely to get sick. So if you have to leave your city to move to another city, you're going to bump into new stuff. D, disease vectors will live in new places. Does anyone know what a disease vector is? It can be a person, but a more generic definition, yeah, a carrier, something that transmits the disease. That's right. So the things that transmit diseases will live in new places. For example, my mom and dad's neighbor was the first California death from West Nile virus. West Nile virus is a perfect example of how climate change can directly raise disease. Because the mosquitoes that carry West Nile virus survive further and further north in California. You know, every year, the puddles of water are that smidgen warmer so that mosquitoes' babies can survive in the puddle long enough to become mosquitoes, and they're the ones that spread the disease. So the vector's range is moving, and thus the disease is moving. Yeah?
Yeah, and like there are some towns that are built specifically at a certain elevation because like mosquitoes can't live there, and now because of rising temperatures, they're moving all over there.
You're giving me goosebumps because that's the next one.
Oh!
The next thing I was going to say is what Ryan just said. The more generic term is cultural disease preparedness. Thanks for asking. I guess it's the next letter within 5. I'm just listing off all the reasons that I think disease is a rising problem. Like I said, there's a bunch of studies where people focus on one thing. So I'm actually coalescing a whole bunch of disease studies. The next one in number 5 is cultural disease preparedness. For example, how many of you sleep under a mosquito net? Right? Like none of us. So we are not culturally practiced to prevent diseases spread by mosquitoes. You know, if you go to Manaus in the Amazon basin, everyone sleeps under a mosquito net. They don't have mattresses, but they have mosquito nets. You put a mosquito net over the hammock. They're ready for diseases spread by mosquitoes. We're not. You guys know Andrea Winchell, a student at our school? She told me I could share this story. Her brother was bitten by a tick, and her brother got Lyme's disease from that tick bite. And when he went to a doctor in Santa Barbara, the doctor didn't recognize it as Lyme's disease because the doctor thought, obviously, you couldn't get Lyme's disease around here. Because the doctor wasn't ready for a foreign disease either. This is what I mean. As a society, we might be really good at dealing with the flu. Everybody knows to cough into your elbow, not into your fist. But culturally, we're not ready for diseases we haven't faced yet. Okay, more list of disease issues. Next, what am I? Is that G? F? I'm on F now, thank you. F. On a warmer planet, diseases live outside your body longer. That probably makes sense, right? Like if you cough onto your hand and you touch a cold doorknob, the disease goes, cold doorknob. But if you cough on your hand and cough on a warm doorknob, the disease goes, yes. Waiting for someone else to take the disease. So this has already been measured. The transfer of diseases increases as temperature goes up. because the disease lives longer outside of you. I'm almost done scaring you about disease, but not quite yet. With higher sea level and stronger storms, there will be more sewage spills to the ocean. It seems irrelevant. For you and me, it probably is.